Okay, so welcome to Purpose of this book, with David G and David G. And tonight I have high confidence. We're going to wrap up the chapter, The Family Afterward. Let's see. Last week we wrapped up on page 132, first paragraph. So that means we're on 132, second paragraph. So we think. David, anything before we dive in?
Bill's just giving us some instruction here in the prior paragraph, as David pointed out. That's where we ended last week on 132 1. Just that and one of my favorite lines is, but we aren't a glum lot. And it says if newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. You know, Chris Raymer says this, and take it for what you want. But should we be sunbeams for Jesus? Yeah, we kind of should be. We should be darn grateful that we have a few 24 hours and welcome that newcomer and show them through demonstration that our lives look totally different, 180 degrees different than it, because we've lived two lives in one. So through that whole little bit that we just read on the last week, it's about at least that paragraph is about what our demonstrations should be look like, and what we shouldn't be talking about in meetings like religion and politics and stuff like that. We should be talking about solution. That's where I'll end it at.
All right. Thanks, David. All right, so page 132, second full paragraph. Here we go. So we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and been given the power to help others.
Nothing, Abby? Okay. Before we get started, I'm David, a recovered alcoholic and a drug addict, and my partner over here, David G, Jedi David, is out of town next week on business. So I have a special guest coming in. Kathy is going to be here for us, Kathy Eber. So she's going to sit in. So come and join us. We had a lot of fun last time she was here, so I had to re-invite her, and she was very gracious and said yes. So I'm excited about that. So that'll be next week, as we probably will be starting the next chapter to employers. So that'll be fun to jump into there. So back to the paragraph here. Some really important words, I believe, anyways, is direction or suggestion, or how our behaviors have changed. Page 132 in the second paragraph. So we think cheerfulness, laughter make for usefulness. I feel cheerfulness. I feel these things today. It's a lot different than the glumness that I had. Sorry that I used that word twice here. I know they used it in the prior paragraph, but that's exactly how I felt when I came in here. I felt absolutely hopeless. And because I've recovered and I have a relationship with power today, I am feeling usefulness, which is we talked about on page 52 in the bedevilments about feeling useless. And I come to find out, and at least in my experience, that probably usefulness might be the key to life. Like, how can I be useful to you, God? And how can I be useful to your kids? And there's a lot of cheerfulness and laughter that come along with that. Like, and the other thing that I say about that, like, I shouldn't take myself so darn serious, right? And I do that from time to time. So, and then it says, outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over seemingly tragic experience out of the past. This is the truest statement I hear in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Is we get things ass backwards. Pardon my language there. We laugh at things we should cry at. We cry at things we should laugh at. And if you've been to enough meetings, you know what I'm talking about. And I'll give
Yeah.
you one experience of that. So when I was 9 months sober, the crimes that I had committed prior to getting sober, the sentencing came place at 9 months. So I had to go away for a while and do some time. And when I left, everybody was laughing, and they said, dude, come back to us when you serve your time. A lot of those people had the experience and been to, and did time before. So they told me what I was supposed to do, but they laughed. And then I followed their direction. And after I got released, I came back. You know what they did? They cried. That's kind of backwards, right? You should cry that I'm leaving. You should laugh that I came back. No, that's not what happened. They actually cried because they were so happy that I followed direction. I came back because I had realized something more than anything else, because I had conceded to my innermost self that I was a real alcoholic. And I desperately needed this program, meaning the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps. And I desperately needed a relationship with power. And because I followed directions, I asked for a big book when I was in jail, and I read it every day. Now, did I comprehend any of it? Not a whole lot of it at that time, but I certainly read it. So I did follow directions. And that was it was dramatic for me. It's something that I experienced, but I say we get things backwards a lot of times, but in jest. But why shouldn't we laugh? It says back to the text. We have recovered. Recovered. There's that word. Recovered, not recovering. Recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Another reference to that, and have been given power to help others. There's a piece of literature out there that you can read. What is it again, David? Off the top of my
Why
head,
we were chosen.
Why We Were Chosen. I think David read it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
A couple months ago, I think.
Oh, it's
But
been time
time
flies when
flies.
you're having fun, you know. So I'm just saying. So Why Were You Chosen? If you weren't on here or you haven't seen that piece of literature, read it. It is absorb it, take it in. We were chosen to carry this message. So life today looks a whole lot different than it did even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, whatever, 25. Doesn't matter. It looks a lot different today because I try to practice these disciplines in my life, meaning 10, 11, and 12.
Thanks. Yeah. So, I'll just underscore a little bit of what David said. This is so critical to get healthy, to get better, right? And I've had this experience so many times, and I've probably shared this sentiment before in this study where a new person, they come in, they're in their first few meetings, maybe their first week, and they decide to share and they tell this like horrible, tragic, terrible story about they like broadsided a school bus and it went up in flames or something like this terrible thing. And at the end of the story, like we all burst into laughter. And not because we're laughing at this person, we're laughing with them because either we did something just as crazy or we damn near thought about doing it, but we are so right there in the pocket with sick people as they come in because we're just as sick. And if we can't sort of look back and laugh and say, oh my God, this is who I was, and thank God literally that I'm getting better, then I'm not sure that we would really persevere, right? Like I have to be able to develop that new perspective. And then, what David was sort of wrapping up with, what a powerful sentence. We have recovered. And how do I get recovered? Well, I do it by working the program of recovery. And by the time I'm into my 9-step amends, I may not be perfectly recovered, but I was just talking to a sponsee about this the other night. And I said, by the time I'm into the 9-step amends, and this is my expectation, people I work with, may not be perfectly recovered, but I expect to be recovered enough to the point that I now have a little devil and an angel on both my shoulders. I might still be struggling because I haven't fully embraced the spiritual life, but I've gotten healthy enough to this point that I can differentiate the true from the false. I've started to see a bunch of promises that have been given to me all through the book because I'm doing the work thoroughly and honestly. I'm recovered in 9, but I have to keep recovering a little bit more, right? As I take on those disciplines of 10, 11, and 12 and live in that. Why? Because I need to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life. Right? Moving on, very bottom paragraph. Bottom 132. Everybody knows that those in bad health and those who seldom play do not laugh much. So let each family play together or separately, as much as their circumstances warrant. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears, though it once was just that for many of us. But it is clear that we made our own misery. Let's read that sentence again. But it is clear that we made our own misery. God didn't do it. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery. But if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate God's omnipotence.
Okay, I have a couple. Vale being valley, the world as a scene of sorrow, and omnipotence is unlimited power.
Thank you, Abby. Yeah, I would agree with Bill there. That's my experience in the bottom of 132 in the third paragraph. Everyone knows those in bad health and those who seldom play do not laugh much. It's difficult when you're not feeling well. It's difficult to laugh, but laughter is medicine. And that's why for me in Alcoholics Anonymous, I need running buddies. in Cocaine Anonymous. I need running buddies, somebody, so I'm not alone. You know, when I got here, I was an I. When I stayed, became a we. We were powers over alcohol, whatever your drug of no choices. And my life was unmanageable. I'm a we now. I don't have to do anything alone anymore. Like I had to get out of myself, go out to coffee, make some friends, get a sponsor, a big book sponsor, preferably someone that's armed with the facts about themselves in this literature here. And then I build these relationships so that when I do get sick, when I do break my ankle, right, Emily, or you know, when I do have to have surgery, Richard, on my shoulder, I don't do this alone. Right. I need to have other people in my life to lift me up spiritually, because when I'm not well, I'm robbing my spiritual bank. I really am. That's my experience. It may not be yours, but I honestly don't feel well about myself. I'm depleting my spiritual bank. All the meetings I've gone to, all the people I work with, I feel like I'm depleting my bank. So I need to get close to God by prayer and meditation, but at the same time, I need to be around people that are like me. On top of page 133, in the first full sentence, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We hear that statement all the time in the meetings, right? Happy, joyous, and free. And we always wonder where it's at. And because these chapters in the back of the book are not something that a lot of us read or study, but we do in this group, of course, that's where it's at. So it's a big surprise to me when I started studying the big book that's where that statement came from. It was on page 133, top of the page. But what is the opposite? I'm sorry.
Two of those big expressions in like back-to-back pages. We had the glum lot, and then we get the happy, joyous, and free. Like two of the phrases thrown around the most in meetings. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, David.
No, great. No, always welcome to do that. So we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Doctor's opinion, bottom of page 28 in the Roman numerals, he talks about us being irritable, restless, and discontented. I would wager here that being happy, joyous, and free is the antidote for being rid of that. And how did I get to be happy, joyous, and free? By getting recovered, because we just talked about that in the last paragraph. And then we've been given power to help others. So that's why I get to be happy, joyous, and free. That is the medicine. That is the prescription for being happy, joyous, and free, at least for me. And then it says we cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears. Like it was, but here's the key. Like you got to read on here. This is the point. Though it was once just for many of us, because that's my past, right? But it's clear that we made our own misery.
Where are we going?
So that means I get to own it. Well, you know where we're going. We're going to page 55. I'm going to go to page 55. Okay, I didn't know if you were going to go there. Page 55.
Oh, go ahead. Go, brother, go.
Second paragraph. Let you guys get there, if you choose to. So it says, actually, we are fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fun of my men. You know what? I wasn't going to go there yet. I'm sorry. I was going to go to page 62. Yeah, sorry about that. I got my. I had the wrong page bookmark. Page 62. First full paragraph. So, guys, I'll wait for you to catch up. My bad. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. So you're telling me, the book is telling me, if I stop making my own troubles, I won't have all these problems? Yeah, it's kind of what it's telling me. And then it says, they arise out of ourselves. Oh, and the alcohol is an extreme. What? Extreme. Extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. I never thought that. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of selfishness. We must, a lot of musts in this paragraph, or it kills us. And who makes that possible? God. God removes the selfishness. I don't have the ability to do that. And there are often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. So, excuse me. So that is, excuse me again. So it says that we're making our own misery, and then I can't quit blaming God. I don't know if anyone else had God on their fourth step in the first column, second column, third column. Come to find out, it wasn't God's fault, wasn't her fault, wasn't his fault, wasn't mom and dad, wasn't the color of my skin, the amount of money that I grew up with. It had nothing to do with that. This is an internal illness with an internal solution. And when I found out what the solution was, working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I started recovering and then became recovered. And then I stopped making my own misery, and I stopped making my own troubles. And this is, but if troubles come cheerfully, but if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize it on it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. So what it talks about there, if I wanted to go to page 14 and the bottom of Bill's story, because some of this stuff is going to happen to us. If you stay sober long enough, deaths in the family, Financial situations could happen. Lost a job, the company goes bankrupt, goes out of business, gets sold, whatever the case is. Maybe you get a promotion, maybe become vice president of the company. A lot of different things will happen in the number of 24 hours you stay sober. But if we go to page 14 in the bottom, in paragraph 6, skip the first 2 sentences and talk about what we need to do, what I need to do here. It talks about how appalling true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. What does that mean? If he did not work, if I don't do work here, if I don't do all the work here, honestly and thoroughly, and help others, he will surely drink again. And if I drink, I will surely die. I changed the verbiage. And then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it's just like that. I need to know that stuff. I got to avoid the drama and the gossip, and I need to practice the 3rd step prayer. I don't have to invite this misery into my life anymore because I stopped making my own troubles. Go ahead, David.
Oh, yeah, great job, David. God, this is a really fantastic paragraph because it's so chock full of direction and like awareness that Bill's giving us, and all this wonderful hope and promises, right? So just jumping towards the top of 133. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Think about that. That's a promise in and of itself. Not only am I promised happiness, joy, and freedom, but my advocate, my father, my principal, God wants me to be this way. All I have to do is act as his agent, and this is how I'm going to carry on. Right? So it's going on to say this life that we're supposed to go on and like morbid reflection and being morose and all this, that's not our way. My belief system is that's not why God saved our butts, right? So that we can be in the dark, in the couch, in the basement saying, woe is me. No, it's so that we are out like trumpeting God in all his glory, right? In each of our own ways about how he saved us and how we can save other people. Going back to the last paragraph, we recovered and been given the power to help others. And then, so important. We could talk about this for hours and hours. It's clear that we made our own misery. Good God. And David took us back to 62. My troubles are of my own making. They were 21 years ago, or coming up on 21 years ago, and they are today when things arise, when I'm not as spiritually fit as I need to be, right? When I'm determining in my spot check inventory or in my 11-step review at night or in the morning, I didn't have such a great day today, you know? So what's going on, right? What did I take back from God? How am I creating new misery? I'll tell you this, my worst days of misery now are a tiny fraction of what they used to be like. Some of you guys who've been studying with us for a long time have probably heard me use my analogy that I always use this when I'm talking about misery and the bedevilments. I was so miserable at the end, guys. Like I would wake up every morning, open my eyes, and I would just ask, or I'd say rather, not again. Not again what? Not again anything. Not again everything. Like what was the point of getting out of bed? I was so overwhelmed with misery. I had 5 giant, overflowing, boiling pots of misery, but I only had a 4-burner stove. This is my favorite little analogy I came up with. Because no matter how I tried to rearrange it, I couldn't handle all the misery that I had to keep cooking, right? I couldn't just take the pot and carry it to the sink and dump it out. I just had to keep cooking, constantly arranging, overflowing, overwhelmed with misery. That was my existence. And I did it. The troubles are with my own making. How? Why? Self. And all those different forms that we read about earlier, 70 pages back, self. And that's what gets me into trouble again today, right? An overabundance of self. So avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, right? So don't go looking for trouble. Don't get sucked up in self. Don't get into this, self-pity and the morbid reflection. If trouble comes, cheerfully capitalizes an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. We're just talking about this before the meeting. I got all this health stuff going on, which stinks because I'm a young guy. I'm 51. But I was talking with David and Emily. I got these arthritic discs in my neck, and I got these arthritic discs in my back, and both my shoulders and my knees. I go to all these orthopedic surgeons, and they're like, man, you don't have the body of a 51-year-old, right? I'm just so beat up. So what could I do? I could be totally bummed out. I could be moping around, or I just accept this is the body that God has given me at this point. And so what am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to get the cortisone shot. I'm going to go get the surgery. And then I'm going to be a demonstration to other people when they get sick and have health stuff that they can get through this too with God and with each other and with recovery, right? We all work through stuff. This is how we save lives. We show people it can be done, right? And I look around the room. There's maybe a couple of spring chickens here, but we got a lot of gray hairs. You guys all know where I'm coming from, right? Remember when we were like 21 and we were like maniac drinking and drugging and partying and all that wild stuff with no thought of what it was going to be like to have every joint arthritic and breaking, right? What we would have traded, right? Had we known. And I'm sure people told us, and it was all like, no, no, no. I got beer to drink and coke to snort and women to chase, right? That was my demonstration then because I wanted to be cool guy. My demonstration now is I'm the agent of God. I'm the sober, recovered guy. I am in the business of saving lives. Unfortunately, I'm not in the results business. I can't cause someone to be sober, but I can show them how I got sober and recovered and how I remain that way. Right? That's what this is saying to me today.
And let me, because you said it, and it's so true. This paragraph is just chock full of stuff that, and I want to talk about it for a couple hours, but we won't do that.
Let's
We're not going to
go.
monopolize, plus we're not here for a couple hours. But it says, so I often wonder when people ask me, what is God's will for me?
Mm.
It's like, dude, I don't know what God's will is for you, but there's references throughout the big book of what it could possibly be, and this is one of them. I don't believe it's just one statement, one sentence is going to describe what's God's will for me, but I think it might be for you to be happy, joyous, and free. I think that's what you have. Freedom from what? Freedom from the bondage of self, for crying out loud. That's what I need to be free from me. It's not the rest of the world. I don't need to have that because it's not the rest of the world's fault. And then it talks about here, but is another sentence down, but it's clear that we made our own misery. So Bill's describing to us what it looks like to be in a recovered state of mind and body. So meaning that I've done a fourth step, so I understand where my misery comes from, which is directly from myself, and what part of my third column would have affected in me, and then where my wrong was at, not my part, but what my wrong is. Because if I'm looking at parts, I'm going to take the crumbs and you're going to get the rest of the pie. In this case, normally I'll eat the whole pie and I'll leave you the crumbs. But when it comes to a four-step inventory, no, I'll just take the crumbs and blame you for everything. But not if I'm doing it honestly and thoroughly out of the book. So again, I don't know necessarily what God is, what His will is for you, but I believe for me, and I go back and reference that through my day, like when we pause when agitated or doubtful. Then I have to go to God and ask Him to remove this from me. And then it's usually replaced with not irritable, restless, and discontent, because that's the avenue I'm going to probably choose, but with happy, joyous, and free, especially if I do what Bill just talked about on the bottom of page 132 in that second paragraph. We have recovered and we have been given the power to help others. Get off my butt, make a phone call, call one of my guys, call one of you guys, call somebody up on the phone, make an appointment, and then get with them and sit down and have some coffee and talk about things, right? Don't have to do any of this alone anymore. I haven't done any of this alone from day one. I had a really good sponsor that pounded that in my head. You're bad if you do that, not ours.
All right, 133, first full paragraph. Now about health. A body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. I'm going to read that again. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. We who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health, but we have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation. Abby?
Dissipation, indulgence in vices which impair or ruin both health and fortune.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Yeah, so Bill's drawing a really big picture for us. A body badly burned. So when I put alcohol in my body, and David just pointed out earlier on. I mean, he's got all these difficulties, and I have some too from my drinking and drugging days. And I have a cousin who spent half his life in prison, the other half on a park bench. That's so he's got all kinds of physical health, but he's always been homeless or he's always been in prison. That's how it's been, and he's in his 50s. So he's got really bad everything. But anyways, badly burned. So get that picture. Burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. There's a time frame. Time takes time. But if I stay focused on this work here and I go help other people, so if I have no shoes or bad shoes, go find somebody with no feet. Go. I mean, honestly, go help someone else. David's always talking about this with your guys. Like, go pick up the phone and help. You're calling me, great. Now go call somebody else and make an appointment with them and go out for coffee. Go spend some time with someone here. And then it says we are convinced. So this is through experience that they're convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. I don't even know what I need to comment on. I think the sentence speaks for itself. I believe. And this says we who've recovered. We covered again. Love that he keeps dropping that in there. From serious drinking are miracles of mental health. Yeah. I have a clear mind today. I am sane today when it comes to drinking. I know the truth from the false. And I know how to treat other people. And I know how to put my wife's common welfare before my own. I know how to pay attention to my daughters and my grandchildren when they're speaking. I don't make it about me. I've learned all these things through demonstrations of you people. Honestly, your demonstrations. I'm not taking credit for this kind of stuff. God has put people in my life, and sometimes he's taking people out of my life. But I pay attention, and these are my demonstrations in life. And then it says, but we have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. One of the first things I tell my guys when they get a few 24 hours, I ask them if they have dental insurance. And then they say, why? I go, because you haven't been to the dentist in 5 years. And he goes, how do you know that? I go, because none of us were. We stopped going to the dentist, unless, of course, we can get some kind of script. Then we'll go to the dentist. That's the only time. I want some kind of pain med. That's the only time I go. Who wants to go for oral surgery? I do as a non-recovered alcoholic because I want the pain med. I swear to God, I'll pull a tooth out just to do anything for pain med. And I won't go into some of my backstory, but I did stupid shit like that. So, but we have a remarkable transformation of our bodies. But, we in the big book, it talks about that we straighten out spiritually, then mentally, and then physically. So I think they're saying, like, keep trudging, keep doing the work here. And then the rest of it will kind of take care of itself, even though I'm responsible for maybe not overeating, maybe certainly not gambling, so all these other things that I replace my alcoholism, which is still the ism. I have to stay. I'm trying to stay in the spiritual ground. And then it says, hardly one of our crowd now shows any market dissipation. So in other words, loss of energy? No, I got no loss of energy. I love, I'm not really happy with the 63-year-old body, almost 64-year-old body I got today. It's not going to look like my 25-year-old body anymore. It's okay. I accept that, but I can do something about it. I can make a decision and I can act on it to not eat sugar after dinner. I can do all these things. But the thing is like, I got to be thinking, if I put other people's welfare before my own, and the reason why I say that, and this is, if you're part of Overeaters Anonymous, God bless, we're glad you're here, welcome, and all that kind of stuff, is something that I have to, all the Anonymouses that I attend, I have to have a sponsor. I have to have someone I can be accountable to. I cannot do this alone. I have a disease of perception, and I won't follow through on the things that I say I'm going to do. That's why I have a big book sponsor, someone I can be accountable. Running buddies like David. So I give him spiritual consent to call me on my crap when I call him and do a 10-step with them. These are the things that I have to do. And I don't blab my whole life story to other people at meetings. I have a few close friends and a sponsor that I would give spiritual consent to.
Yeah, this is actually another really great paragraph. So a body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking, depression vanish in a twinkling. What do we want? Well, we want a badly burned body that's recovered overnight, and I want the depression and the misery to be instantly gone. Why? Because an alcoholic is an addict of pretty much everything. All I know is instant gratification. I have no sense of playing the long game, of earning everything, right? That's why I loved alcohol and other drugs because I got an immediate effect produced, right? I felt different right away. So I want to feel different. I want to look different. Listen, I have experienced so many times what it was. Get a new sponsee, he's brand new in recovery. He's like, I'm joining the gym. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm like, you're not doing any of those things. Do not buy a gym membership. Smoke those cigarettes. Smoke more. We're going to worry about the stuff that could kill you quickly,
Yeah.
which is the alcohol or the other drugs, the cutting or whatever his problem is. Well, it's in my fellowships, right? It's drinking or other drugs. And like just smoke, right? We'll take care of the smoking later. A year or two, when you're recovered, then we'll do that. We try to change everything all at once, you're gonna relapse. I've just seen it so many times. You're gonna lose direction, right? We're gonna pursue the wrong thing. And then yeah, we're convinced that a spiritual mode of living is the most powerful health restorative. Me getting recovered is what allows me to start getting healthier in all the other parts of my life. I've said this a million times. I always talk about this. I'm sure you guys have heard me say it. Therapy. Anybody ever go to therapy? Like, psychologists. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of us. Anybody ever go to therapy before you got recovered? Yeah. Was it a colossal waste of time and money for you guys too? Yeah. Right. What a total waste of time and money. Then anybody go back once you got recovered? Yeah. And have a totally different experience, right? It was magical. It actually made progress and I was able to own my stuff and it wasn't just going and being the victim and stuff like that, right? Me getting better, me getting spiritually fit allows me to then start to work on my mental health. And it doesn't always work that way in the order of operations, right? Everybody's struggles are a little different. If you meet my wife, Becky, who's been sober 18 years, she had to get treated for her mental health before she could come into recovery. That was just her way, right? Her depression and anxiety was so bad. But the good news was once she got the mental health treatment she needed, and then she came into recovery and took these steps and took on our lifestyle, took both those things for her. Right now, 18 years later, right? Clean and sober wife, right? I met in a meeting. Isn't that amazing? And then the other things that happen too. Some of us, we get misdiagnosed. I'm not a psychiatrist. I will never tell anybody what medicine to or not to take. I will just share that I have known many people who were misdiagnosed by physicians or on all sorts of medicine. And you know what? Ultimately, they found out they were just an alcoholic who needed a spiritual experience and a new way of living. And they were able to get off those meds. I didn't suggest it. Never. That was between them and the doctor. But again, there's other people like my wife. She's got to take her meds for life, right? That's her story. But some of us are misdiagnosed, right? Not all, but some. How am I going to know to ask? How am I going to know to be honest with my doctor? To ask that question, you think I still need this? Right? Has anybody ever had this experience? About 9 months clean and sober, so very early recovery for me. I went to see my family doctor, and so my mom was a retired physician, and this guy Ben was a colleague of hers. So he sort of, took extra good care of me because I was the son of his colleague. I go in to see him, and he just said, he looks at me and he says, "What's different?" Like nothing. And he's like, "You lose weight?" And he looked at the chart. He's like, "No." He's like, "What's different?" "Something's different." And I'm like, "I've been sober for 9 months." He's like, "Knew it. I knew it." He could see it. I'm not saying he could see it in me like Bill saw it in Ebby. I'm not Bill Wilson, but the change was enough. Maybe it was just in my eyes. This is what happens. I've seen guys and gals in treatment. They come in looking like shriveled little mummies, right? Their skin, their complexion, everything is so messed up. And then they have this powerful health restorative, the spiritual mode of living. They appear to be reborn physically. Guys, stick around. This is a great reason to keep going to meetings too. Go and see the miracles of people getting better. Go get a treatment center service commitment, like David and I have had for years and years. See these people in the gutter and then bring them back to your meetings and sponsor them and see them turn into magnificent sponsors of their own, right? We've recovered from serious drinking or miracles of mental health. Well, I think I was clear about that. But we've seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Yeah, hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation, right? And Abby gave us it. Now, we might show other marks that aren't going to go away. other scars from mistakes we made, bad tattoos like a drunken sailor at 3 a.m. We may still wear some things, right? But what Bill's talking about here is that those jaundice going away, the being skinny because I'm drinking all of my calories, right? The nosebleeds from snorting too much coke, the track marks of somebody who's all these things. All this stuff can get better, guys. All this stuff does get better. Takes a small price, right? I got to sacrifice self. I got to take on this design for living, this new way of life, thoroughly and honestly. I got to work all these steps, and then I must get rid of self. And how do I ultimately exercise getting rid of self? By carrying this message to other alcoholics and addicts and people who need it. Right? Help all of God's children.
Let me add one thing. And I get to hear, I've heard a lot of David's story. Obviously, he's my vet buddy, and you should get a running buddy. Like, get a running buddy if you don't have one. Like, and do big book studies or go to meetings or sponsor people, whatever. But I know those stories. But what I love about those stories is it's the miracle that I didn't see when the doctor points out to me that I look different.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, because I'm always the last one to know, right? Always. And my first sponsor said, you're always going to be the last one to know. Like, why? He goes, there's no good why questions in Alcoholics Anonymous. So don't ask why. Ask how. You know, and that guy's like 47 years sober today. So I think I'll listen to what he has to say. But the whole thing is the miracle of mental health and physical health. You know, not all of us recovered physically, all like David pointed out, but the fact is someone else saw something in me that I was different. And like David's point is to go to meetings and watch people that you took out of treatment centers that came out of jails and watch them recover. And then they get better physically, mentally, and certainly spiritually. You know, that's the great miracle that, you know, the watching the fellowship grow up about you. That is the great miracle that I don't want to miss out on that kind of stuff. That's why I attend meetings on a regular basis. That's why I work with a lot of people, you know, that's why we get to do these Zoom meetings. And Zoom has been a blessing for David and I know all of you, or you wouldn't be here either. You know, we're sitting in our underwear. Well, I wasn't going to tell you that, but I did. I'm not sitting in my underwear. I wouldn't do that. But I'm saying, and we get to be on a meeting with each other. It's like crazy. And I know people from all over the world now, our friends in Thailand and Vietnam. It's like, man, Tony, what up, my friend? You know, it's crazy. That's all I got.
I want to just double down on something. It's not come from the book, but because David mentioned it and his former sponsor was right on. There are no good answers to why questions in recovery, in my experience. Right. So my spiritual guru, Yoda, most famous for saying, do or do not, there is no try. But in another scene in The Empire Strikes Back, when he's riding around on Luke's back and Luke's trying, he's this whiny guy. You can remember Luke, right? In Star, he's whiny. He's trying to figure everything out. And he's like, well, why must I do this? And why must I? And Yoda at one point is just like, stop. There is no why, right? No more am I going to teach you today. Like Yoda's just saying, this is about the force. This is about spirituality, right? This is not about why and understanding. So I have some knowledge of it that I can select and dissect. All those why questions, I believe, lead me away from God, right? I act to get close to God. Right? I don't need to question it. Okay. Paragraph 2 on 133. See where we are here. Okay. But this does not mean that we disregard human health measures. This does not mean we disregard human health measures. I think I made a fine point of that, right? We are not psychiatrists here. And even if you are a psychiatrist, not when you're in a meeting, not when you're sponsoring. That's a different hat. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. I feel like I jumped ahead on this paragraph in my comments, but I think that's okay.
Well, you did great.
Ab, anything? Okay. David?
I'll be brief, so maybe we can finish up this chapter.
Yeah.
So I will skip the first sentence, and Bill makes statements. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. So I guess what the book is kind of saying to me is, if you need a doctor, go get one. Go get a doctor. If I'm spiritually depressed, What do? I call my sponsor. I pray. I call my sponsor. I get into the steps. I fill out my triangle. Make sure I'm working the 12 steps of recovery. I'm going to a meeting, and then I'm doing some service. But if I'm clinically depressed, which is a real thing, I sponsor a lot of manic depressants. And just like David, I do not tell them to get off their meds. I don't ever. We have discussions, but I ask them to help me so I can help them. I don't need to hear what's going on in therapy. That's not my place to be. But I just need to know where you're at. What's defining you today? Are you still a child of God? Are you robbing yourself of that pleasure that God is your father, your principal, and your director? I need to know that kind of stuff. And what are you working on today? So and then and then I'll go to the bottom of that paragraph there. Because they talk about their services are often indispensable. That's a must. That's a must in the big book. Indispensable means must in treating a newcomer and then following his case afterwards. So that doesn't mean that I should just like go to meetings. Don't leave before the miracle happens. Don't leave after the miracle happens. Please don't leave after the miracle happens. I heard a guy say it, and I can't back it up with statistics necessarily, but I can tell you that he went to a meeting and they had birthday board. At this meeting, it was up in Chicago, I believe it was, and they had a bunch of anniversaries for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Then there's a huge void between 5 and 20. Hardly any names. What happens to those people? I don't think they all drank. I just don't think they were working with others, and they lost their primary purpose is to carry this message to the alcoholic who still suffers. And they didn't, and they just left. And maybe they're living a happy, joyous, free life. I have no idea. I'm not judging anyone. I'm not spreading a rumor. I'm not gossiping here. I'm just saying I need to stick around here. And I try to do, I think I do more today than I've ever done in my life because I believe that's where God is directing me to go today. So
Yeah.
it's a must to keep treating this illness that I have. It has to be spiritual. And if I have to go to treatment or if I have to go to a therapist, then I go to therapist, but I let them see, because I like to direct conversations. I like to be the large margin in charge. So my wife tells me. So, but when I've gone to therapy, and I've gone for a couple of times, I let them pose the questions and then I try to answer them. As David pointed out, today I can answer them honestly because the result I get today is way different than the result before. Why? Because I'm a liar. That's why.
All right, I'm going to move us on.
Okay.
Bottom paragraph 133. One of the many doctors who had the opportunity of reading this book in manuscript form told us that the use of sweets was often helpful, of course, depending upon a doctor's advice. He thought all alcoholics should constantly have chocolate available for its quick energy value at times of fatigue. He added that occasionally in the night, a vague craving arose which would be satisfied by candy. Many of us have noticed a tendency to eat sweets and have found this practice beneficial. Am, anything? I'll just say this was not very common when I got sober in the big city of Chicago, but man, when I moved out here, we got out here in the country, man, we have so many meetings with baskets of like the little fun-sized candy bars, right? It's like all gonna lose a tooth and gain 5 pounds in every meeting. And I just want to point out here, I think it's probably a good idea. I like that they suggest this. There's a lot of sugar and alcohol that's no longer in our body, and it gives a little effect produced. So at the beginning, when I'm white knuckling it because I don't have a new relationship with God yet, a little sugar effect produced to help bridge the gap until I get healthy, hopefully within a couple of weeks, start to get truly recovered. Doesn't sound like the end of the world, right? Unless you have uncontrolled diabetes, in which case, please don't eat a bunch of sugar.
So yeah, the only thing I'm going to add is I think Bill's really referencing here the people who are detoxing. Yeah, this is a good idea, and they used to do that. I won't go into a backstory; it's irrelevant at this point. But they would do that and give you like honey and milk and have you drink that during the meeting. So yuck, that sounds awful. The honey doesn't sound bad, but the milk, ugh. Okay. Anyways, just like Jim with whiskey in his milk. Why would you ruin good whiskey, bro? I just don't get it. So, anyways, that's all I got there.
All right. First paragraph on 134. A word about sex relations. Alcohol is so sexually stimulating to some men, I'm going to say and women, that they have overindulged. Couples are occasionally dismayed to find that when drinking is stopped, the man tends to be impotent. Unless the reason is understood, there may be an emotional upset. Some of us had had this experience only to enjoy in a few months a finer intimacy than ever. There should be no hesitancy in consulting a doctor or psychologist if the condition persists. We do not know of many cases where this difficulty lasted long. Excuse me. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, God bless. Yeah, I'm not going to add a lot to this other than it starts off the first sentence, a word about sex. Well, we're back to that again. That's what I got as my note because he did it on page 68, right before page 69. Ha ha ha. You know, but and then he says in page 68, in the fourth paragraph, it says now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. Yeah. Okay. Enough said. I don't need to say anymore. I'm not really going to comment much on that paragraph. Go see a doctor, go see a psychologist if need be. That's all I got.
So yeah, the most common thing that I've experienced talking to both men and women that I've sponsored is it gets sober and they're like, oh, wait, I'm not gonna be drunk, I'm not gonna be high, I'm gonna have like sober sex. And that's
Hmm.
scary for a lot of people because their entire sexual experience or sexual identity involved having some intoxicant in their body. You know? And I think that's part of what the point of making here is he's saying, just like everything else, it might take a little time, but we're going to figure out how to be human without having the alcohol in our system, right? In all parts of the human existence. The alcoholic may find it hard to reestablish friendly relations with his children. Their young minds were impressionable while he was drinking. Without saying so, they may cordially hate him for what he's done to them and to their mother. The children are sometimes dominated by a pathetic hardness and cynicism. They cannot seem to forgive and forget. This may hang on for months, long after their mother has accepted dad's new way of living and thinking.
I have cordially and cynicism. Cordially meaning sincerely, and cynicism is pessimism or distrustful criticism.
Yeah, my experience is my kids were very young when I got sober. I was very blessed that they didn't have a lot of backlash from my drinking and drugging, but they did witness really bad blowouts between my wife and I for me not coming home for days on end. But that got repaired by me coming home every day and actually learning how to treat my wife because that was a new experience that I didn't have. Like even treating my kids better. Giving them my full attention. Sometimes kids that are 5 or 6 or 7 years old have a hard time telling a story, and I have a very low attention span, and I just like have 18 things to do when I walk in the door. No, I need the nudge that I got from God when my grandson was about 9 years old was to pay attention and give him your undivided attention. I honestly felt that nudge and I've done that ever since. And now he's off to college, so I give him my full attention as well as I give my wife and my kids and even my customers. But guess what? I'm a salesperson, so of course I give them my full attention because they have something that I want, their business. But the thing is, here is like children are sometimes dominated by pathetic hardness and cynicism. My behavior is going to either tell you I've changed because this is an inside job. I brought it up earlier. It's an inside job, and the solution has to be internal too, and it has to be a relationship of power. So prayer, meditation, and I gave a story a while back about a guy who I've been sponsoring for a number of years who had no relationship with his kids whatsoever. And I said, I told him, I said, he's like 5 years sober, 4 years sober. And I said, why don't you write your son a kindly letter since he won't take your phone calls? And he hawed around about it and he procrastinated. He didn't do anything. And one day he was going to go to the gym and all of a sudden he got this nudge and he went back into the house and he sat down at the table and he started writing this kindly letter. And before he even put his son's first name on it, his son texted him 5 years removed from having a relationship with them. The key here is he became willing to do the work. He cracked the door willingness. God shows up, and then his son reaches out to him. Is that anything short of a miracle? It's all about the responsibility that I have about doing this work. Anything that I fall short on doing, I will get the half measures. What do they get you? 0. 80%? 0. 99? 0. 100%. Follow the directions in the book, and you will live a new and happy, joyous, and free life. I'm jumbling up a lot of statements in the big book. I don't really care. I'm just saying those are my experiences, and I get to watch someone else repair the damage that's been done in this past.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that to say one of the great themes of this chapter is that the whole family is spiritually ill. right? And the pace at which the affected children start to get spiritually well may not match the alcoholic or the spouse. And that's okay. But the promise is that in time, they ought to come around. In time, they
Ah,
will see that he is a new man, and in their own way, they will let him know it. When this happens, they can be invited to join in morning meditation, and then they can take part in the daily discussion without rancor or bias. From that point on, progress will be rapid. That's a promise.
mhm.
Marvelous results often follow such a reunion. That's another promise. Abby?
Yes, I have rancor, which is the deepest malignity or spite, deep-seated and implacable malice, violent ill will. Bias is just prejudice.
Thank you. So just a couple of quick thoughts for me here. So when is this going to happen? When are the children going to feel better about mom or dad? Well, in time, right? What does that mean? That means it could be today, could be tomorrow, could be in a year, but it's going to happen, right? It's going to be in time. And what are they going to see? They're going to see that we are new spiritual beings. And why is it going to be effective to them? Because they're going to see results. It's not going to be all those sweet promises that we made. Oh, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to be around more. I'm not going to miss any of your games. I'm not going to, not going to, all that stuff. They are going to see. It's going to be a demonstration. And that's what's going to be moving. And then once they pick up what we've been putting down, if it makes sense for the family, right? The husband, the wife, the kids, or whatever your collection is, maybe they take on some of the meditation practice if they want to do it. Again, we're not putting our spiritual practices on anybody else. And then those promises at the end. It's going to be some rapid progress, and marvelous results are often going to follow. Go ahead, David.
And the only thing I'm going to add to that is my demonstration will either show you I'm changing or I'm not. You know, and the thing is, even today, I pray in front of my kids. They've seen me pray thousands of times in front of my wife. I get on my knees and I do that. And my daughter is over here today, and she's applying for this really cool job, which will be life changing if it happens, if it's God's will. And I said, I've been praying for you, and she goes, well, just be specific. I go, oh, thank you, sponsor. I certainly will. That's all I got.
Top of 135. Whether the family goes on a spiritual basis or not, the alcoholic member has to, if he would recover. Warning. The others must be convinced of his new status beyond the shadow of a doubt. Seeing is believing to most families who've lived with a drinker. Nothing from Ab. Well, this just backs up the last paragraph, right? The whole point here is, so there's two things. One, family can choose to join me or not. They may never forgive me. They may never forget, despite a lot of suggestions here that they will, right? But wife or no wife, husband or no husband, family or no family, job or no job, money or no money, the alcoholic member has to go on a spiritual basis to recover. Period. Right? This is about me and my new relationship with God and being his agent. And the only way there's an opportunity with the family is if I show them. Right? Backs it up again. So in the previous paragraph, it said, "In time they will see," and here again it says, "Seeing is believing."
Yeah, the only thing I add to that is in the second well, after the comma, it says the alcoholic member has to is a must if he were recovered. So what do I have to? I have to stay on a spiritual basis. Whether my family, my family was already spiritual. They really were. But I robbed them of that, you know, and made them angry and lost their hope. And I did all these things by my behaviors of being a live alcoholic. And the thing is, when I recovered through this process of doing this work here, I needed to change, and I don't have the power to do that on my own, but the steps, relying upon those steps and the power of God in my life, I've had this internal change with this started affecting my outsides. So my insides changed. So my outside changed, outside experiences changed. And then got free too. So yeah, my wife and I, she's Catholic, I'm Jewish. We've gone both places many times, and I enjoy the experience. I have a close friend as a pastor who just like I said on the last 2 pages ago, if you need a practitioner, if you need a psychologist or doctor, or if you need a priest or a minister or a pastor or a rabbi, go get one. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it's all about my actions.
All right, I'm going to just read through the end here because it's all related.
Okay.
Here's a case in point. One of our friends is a heavy smoker and coffee drinker. There was no doubt he overindulged. Seeing this and meaning to be helpful, his wife commenced to admonish him about it. He admitted he was overdoing these things, but frankly said he was not ready to stop. His wife is one of those persons who really feels there's something rather sinful about these commodities, so she nagged, and her intolerance finally threw him into a fit of anger. He got drunk. Of course, our friend was wrong, dead wrong. He had to painfully admit that and mend his spiritual fences. Though he is now a most effective member of Alcoholics Anonymous, he still smokes and drinks coffee, but neither his wife nor anyone else stands in judgment. She sees she was wrong to make a burning issue out of such a matter when his more serious ailments were being rapidly cured. We have 3 little mottos which are apropos. Here they are. First things first. Live and let live. Easy does it.
I have a couple here. Admonish is to express warning about or disapproval of something. Ailments, which is troubles or ills. And I don't know how you say it, David.
Apropos.
Apropos. Fitting, very fitting, or related to the matter at hand.
So real quick, this is what I said earlier. You're coming in, you're getting sober. Don't tell me you're going to give up caffeine and quit smoking. Keep drinking your coffee, your tea. Smoke up, Johnny. In a year or two, we'll talk about those things if you still feel the same way. And also, listen, this guy wasn't spiritually fit, right? Let's be clear about that. He got so angry he drank. That's not what a spiritually fit, recovered alcoholic does. A getting spiritually better, still recovering alcoholic, maybe, right? Go ahead. That's all I got.
Yeah, so the only thing I'm going to add to that is that the last paragraph or the last part of the sentence where he got drunk, fits of anger is resentment, and resentment is the number one offender of alcoholics. So yeah, he justified her nagging, and he took a drink. He wanted to take a drink a long time. He had reservations. He was not spiritually fit. And then at the very bottom it says first things first. So live and let live, and easy does it. That's from an author called Henry Fosdick, Fosdick, and he was an American pastor who had a lot of different slogans. One of them says hating people hating people is like burning down your house to get rid of a rat. That's one of his. Another one is a person wrapped up in himself makes a small package, and no life can. He has a lot of them, so I only wrote down 3. No life can grow great until it's focused on it is focused, dedicated, and disciplined. So there's 3 P's here in this first things first, live and let live, and easy does it. 3 P's. First things first, there's priorities. Live and let live is patience. So love and tolerance of others is our code. And then easy does it is persistence. Recovery takes time. Practicing these principles in all my affairs takes practice.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to send something and I sent it to Henry Fosdick. There you go. I put it in the chat.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to kill the recording.